right? Right, which is basically, saying that there's 12 cycles that the Earth has with the galaxy that makes up what we call, seasons, right? And and so now we're at the last part of that 12-month cycle. I mean, that 12 process cycle, which is this 12th month, which is accumulation of all the life, right? And so in this month, we have on obviously Rosh Chodesh, it's humongous. They say the month of Adar is they say like different planets. I mean, different planets influence different months, right? So the month of Adar, the planet Jupiter rules over that, and the planet of Jupiter is about spirituality, right? And so they said like the idea of being like happy and spiritual and connected, seeing things unified, allows us to connect to this like power that exists inside of this month. This is the month Moshe was born and Moshe left the world, which is the seventh day of Adar. Right, the seventh day of Adar is when Moshe was born, and he died on the same day, the seventh of Adar. So you have that, and then we have Purim. Well, we have the fast, right, which is on the 13th, right? We have the fast of Esther, right, and then we have the holiday of Purim, right? And so, and then from Purim, at the moment of Purim, we have a literally 30 days into Pesach, right? And it's awesome, powerful light that's coming down during Pesach. So the point is saying that, all these things, all these cycles, um, all these cycles, are just, they are what they are, their process. You guys hear me fine, right?
Yeah, it just seemed a little muffled, but no, we're trying to fix it on our end.
All right. Well, let me try. I'm gonna try something. Hold on one second. Okay. Can you hear me better now? All right, there we go. Yeah, I went out. I was having all these issues with the microphone. I don't know what's going on with my mic on the thing, but anyway, so I went out and got these Apple earphones. Are supposed to be like really like top quality, so we should be good. Okay, all right. So we're in business. All right. So anyway, so the point that we're saying over here is this idea of understanding that this idea of understanding that the Earth and the rest of the universe goes through 12 cycles. And these 12 cycles are what we call, the zodiac or whatever. But the point is to say now we're approaching this week, approaching the beginning of the end of the 12th cycle. And so on Thursday night is Rosh Chodesh Adar, right? And so that end of that cycle is a very interesting time because a few things are happening. One thing that's happening is that this month of Adar, and we have to go into the idea of Adar and this, and we'll get there more tomorrow, right? We're not going to go so into it today because I want to introduce um, this new safe. But this is deal with Adar. So the thing about Adar is that Adar is a time where the sages teach that each month there's a certain planet that rules over it, that influences a lot. And so the month of Adar, the planet Jupiter is the planet that influences the month of Adar. And then that's the month of spirituality, right? And then the month of spirituality is it gives us the ability to kind of like tap into this world of miracles, this world of being able to see the continuity. Not the same like Nissan, right? Not the same as Nissan. Nissan's a different dimension of miracle, right? It's much more of a physical expression. It's the separation of teva. But over here, we're saying so on this month, on the seventh day of this month, so the first day is going to be the night, Thursday night, right? So you're going into Shabbat on this. And so on the seventh of Adar is Moses's birth and death. He was born and died on the same day, which is the seventh of Adar. So it's a very powerful day. People do different things like candles, read Torah, this type of thing. Then on the 13th of Adar, you have the fast of Esther, right? So you have this dynamic of bringing that dynamic of that fast. And then on the 15th, if you're on the 15th, you have Purim, right? You have the month of Purim, right? So on the 15th of Adar is the beginning of this process of being 30 days away from Pesach, right? And even when you think about it, the first commandment in the Torah was this month of Nisan that comes after that is actually a new year, right? Because there's 4 new years out of the year, right? So one of those new years is on Nisan. So 15 days after Purim is a Rosh Chodesh. Like it's not a Rosh Chodesh. It is a Rosh Chodesh. I mean, it's a new year, right? But it's the new year of kings, right? When we go over the kings and their reign, time of renewing new books, all these type of things, like accounting almost, right? And so that is the first of Nisan, right? And then obviously the 10th is when God commanded us to gather the lamb. And in the 14th, the afternoon of the 14th is when we were supposed to slaughter them, and then we ate them, and then Pesach being the 9th, the 14th, 19th, the 14th and 15th of Nisan, right? And then from Nisan, we have 50 days from that 15th of Nisan, we have 50 days into Chovot, right? And in between then, we have the counting of the Omer. So the point is saying, so everything, is getting ready to go up really fast, right? And so we had this downtime during the winter to kind of like dig and go through, toil, build vessel, so we could receive the light. So you see like how the time of concealment during the winter and the concealment, the time, the temperature, everything puts us in a places where everything's concealed. So we have to work a little bit harder to connect. Then during the times where everything's revealed and it's all this light and everything's growing and sprouting, you can see these downtimes that we struggle with during the seasons is actually building the vessel to receive the light during the spring, right? And so this is a really important idea to see like how the nature itself is teaching us Torah, right? And these types of things. So really quick, so one thing I just want to touch on, because I was able to get to more clarity on this issue that Rav Ashlag presented to us, which is this idea of the four perceptions of reality, right? I just want to briefly touch on that. That's not really the focus of the conversation today. We're going to bring a new book into the table, which represents another aspect of you building your outlook. Okay, so the thing is like this. So what we have is, he says, the perception of reality can be understood in 4 aspects, right? So one aspect was substance. Another aspect was form of substance or enclosed form. And then you have abstract substance. And then you have essence, okay? So what I want to be more clear on is these first 2, right? So the idea of substance is like this. So say you look at a person, right? Look at your kids, you look at your husband, look at your wife, whatever. And the substance of that person is like basically cells, molecules, these type of things, right? Now, the thing is, the form of that substance is them as a person with their personality. You see what I'm saying? So one aspect is the aspect that substance that makes them up who they are. And then the second part
is the aspect of how that aspect manifests itself, how it projects itself. Or say you look at a tree, right? And so a tree is a combination of, like, molecules, this, all these different components that make it up. It's substance. But the way it expresses itself is in a frame of tree, right? With the bark, this whole dynamic, right? Now the third part is abstract substance. That is what we project, right? We project, with our imagination and our five senses and all these things, we project on to that abstract substance what we think it is. And the point that Rav Ashlag was bringing out was this idea of saying, like, okay, well, you know what? Through abstract function, which is us projecting onto something what it is, we have the ability to take away from his root substance, or saying the substance on the first level, meaning that, like, say if a person is a truthful person or a dishonest person, right? That truthful or dishonest aspect is part of what their substance is. That's who they are as a person. But the way it expresses itself is like through lies or through charitable acts. So he says through abstract functions, what we project onto something, we can actually uproot the aspect of their substance and replace it to whatever we project on it. And so he's saying that's why a wise person does not trust their perception of what something is, right? Because the substance and the abstract function is limited because of all we are operating on the frame of what we project on it. And the essence itself, right? And the essence itself is beyond our logic. We will never understand it, right? We'll never understand the essence of why this is the essence of that. No, but we can maybe get to the point that we understand that there's a substance and an abstract substance, but our battle is what we project onto it, right? And so he used the example of a person, to say a person who's really inspired by, like, the idea of truth and justice and these things, because this is how they see reality, right? They say, well, they come to the conclusion through all their research and everything that truth is king, right? That's a universal idea. But he says like this, he says, but what if a person can save, 1,000 lives by telling a lie? Right? You believe in truth, you believe in justice, but you can save 1,000 lives by telling a lie. What do you do? So he says, if you use the Torah, you would see that saving the lives is more important than the principle of truth, because the Torah values human life higher than everything else, the preserving of human life. So what does that mean? So that means I can come to conclusions, I can see things, I can operate in things, and I can function in the world, but that does not have anything to do with its totality, because I'm not able to connect to its totality. I'm not able to connect to the essence of anything. All I can do at best is to recognize that there's a substance that makes it up, and then there's an expression of substance, and then I'm battling whatever I'm projecting onto that. But the essence of what it is, I don't know. So what do I trust in? How can I make a rational decision of complete deduction if I cannot tell the upside? This is where we're hindered at. And he says the point is saying that this idea hinders us. It doesn't hinder us at all. We could be totally satiated and engulfed with just the physical expression of anything, right? And so he's saying, so that's the dynamic. So this is a dynamic. And so he's saying that the Zohar itself, which is not the main point of this conversation today, by the way, but I just want to go over it. The Zohar itself is only dealing with the aspect of substance and form of substance. The abstract rationale and the essence of it doesn't go into, right? And why is that important? Because when we view reality and we view the things around us, it empowers us, right? It empowers us because we know, like, if I smell something, okay, I smell it, but it's not the totality. I've seen a lot of non-kosher food smell really good. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't the totality, right? Or anything that we come in contact with, anything we're compelled to. It gives us the ability to pause, right? And not react. right? And to be able to say, okay, I have this impulse, I have this desire, but where does it fit into God's message? Because I'm only able to connect to the substance and the expression of that substance. But the essence, I will never understand. And all I have at this moment is my what I'm projecting onto it, right? And so from there, I have this ability, this mechanism to go through life and say, hey, you know what? I got to think this out, man. Because just because I want something and just because it feels right does not mean that's true. I got to match it up. I got to cross-reference this desire. I got to cross-reference this thing. So that's what Rabbi Isaac is trying to get us to in this part. But what I wanted to do is, with that being said, or any points to that, by the way, just talk about that for a second. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
That makes me think about the parashah from yesterday, where the precept comes, and the statute comes for the judges not to basically take the side of the poor because of their what we perceive, that the judge perceives to be their lack or their life condition, but rather look to the law and make your decision based off of the law and not off of that person's circumstance. Because ultimately we can be, if we, the way we perceive things one way, should not, we need to be wise, because it's just like we see a city getting bombed, and we look at it and you see the images like that. That's one of the things we were talking about, like dealing with Gaza. This is war, and the idea is that back in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, there wasn't a lot of there wasn't social media, there wasn't internet, things were not televised like that. So when you see women and children carrying their babies and all this has always happened. But now that it's televised, everyone perceives, oh yeah, this is evil. But if we were to go back in the days of Joshua and there was a video camera rolling, would we say the same thing? Or would everybody corral around Joshua and still corral around him and say, this is righteous, this is good, this is the will of Hashem? You see? And so it's about that perception, because even though we see one thing, we project our emotions, our current situation, our upbringing, the way we were raised. We project all that on a certain situation without having the facts. And when we do that, the sad part about it is that there's times whereas people actually get the facts and they get the substance, they see the form, but yet they still project their own narrative on a situation, knowing everything, having all information, but they still, because that was at the forefront of the inception of the thought itself, that it was based upon your own perception and not on the facts and the truth. We've had people read the Torah, read scriptures, whether or not we should keep the commandments or not, read it, see it, understand it, and still say, oh no, we don't have to keep that. And that's like, wow, like what's going on there? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and on that point is like you see like why advertisement is such an effective mechanism to motivate people, right? Because it creates, it creates it creates, the ability to motivate impulse, right? And it's able to create fantasy and story, right? And these types of things. And even the colors, right? We see all the colors now even have symbolic meanings that are connecting us to energies on the internal level, right? So, like this is the society that we live in, right? When you walk around and you go into a downtown area or metropolitan and you see all these people walking around, this is the base consciousness that most people are functioning with, right? And so, go ahead.
Chief Rabbi, that reminds me of that picture, that magazine picture that I sent to you with the Adidas tennis shoes.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
That was in the early 70s. That's an old magazine that I have. Right? It's an Ebony magazine, it's a very old magazine. And that advertisement, if you look at it, you see the man, he's black man, he's sitting there like daydreaming, right? And they got like these little dots like representative of like thought. And then you look over to the side and you see what he's thinking about. He sees professional athletes playing basketball. And then you see the tennis shoes. And if you look at the color of the tennis shoes, you got red, green, and blue, which now I look at colors a whole different way now. But the idea is that the comment is that I want to be a star. And so his perception and the perception that's projected about what a star is based upon what the entertainment industry and the marketing industry is defining what a star is. You see? And so he said, I want to be a star. You want to say it?
Yes. And like when you think about when it was said that we can't have two thoughts at the same time, everything is being, thinking for us. Everything is thinking for us. So you could be thinking one thing when you walk into the store, like, okay, I need to this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden you see a monitor with something going, and now your thought pattern just completely shifts. And so it's like, boy, we have to really be guarded and be aware of. You almost kind of have to know the place that you're going into and look at it almost kind of like you're in a minefield. Like, okay, I know they have a monitor over here. I know they got magazines over here. I know they have this. Let me just try to stay as focused as I can to get in and not be distracted or deterred by this, because you can't have the two thoughts in your mind at the same time. You don't, you can only have one thought, and it's pulling everything around us is pulling for our thought process. And
if you look at it, the man on the picture is dark in the background. It's like he doesn't have anything. It's like it's nothing. Well, I can show you an article of a European man. He's on a boat, driving a boat, and the advertisement is saying, live the dream. And so the perception is totally different. It's like he already got the boat.
Yeah.
But he's trying to show his brothers, hey, man, come on with me. Come get in the boat with me. Live the dream with me, right? So it's just two dynamics that is like always being portrayed, and nothing has changed. It's still the same devices.
On that point, it's an interesting point bringing up. On that point, it's an interesting thing when we think about like God's love, right? And God loving us and like what that means, and how to really connect to that, especially being African American, the stuff that we've been through, just like how do we understand God's love? What's the process? What's going on? Because we certainly have loved God throughout this process, right? But you think about it, it's like you're just saying, so you have a commercial, and so one commercial has a guy that is, let's use the term white, right? A white guy, he's there. He is surrounded by water. He's on a boat. He has his independence. He has his own direction, and he has no boundaries. And you have another image, which is a person they would call black. And this person who's black, he has a tennis shoe. And, he has the ability to walk with more comfort than he did the day before, right? Now, the thing is on that mind control mechanism only works without spirituality. Because we can look at that and say, hey, you know what? This person from another nation is trying to convince me that his fantasy can ever bring me fulfillment. Look how deceitful that is. That he wants to convince me that if I'm on his boat and I have his perception of freedom, my perception of freedom is not like you. My perception of freedom is within. It's due to my work on myself, to my connection to the Creator. I know you don't know about that. We are not built the same. But nevertheless, you want to convince me that your way could in any way work for me, and I can use all of my brilliance and DNA of prophets and kings. I could use that to try to work in your world, to achieve that. However, once I attain what you have, because I can do that and I will do that, I will still be as empty as I was before. So go ahead, jump on that.
So maybe we ought to take that same ad with the tennis shoes and Adidas
Mm-hmm.
and remove all of the athletes, remove the tennis shoes, and just have the brother have the so-called black man there in the dark, and he's like staring off into space. And on the bottom we put, he about to do matters,
Oh
right?
wow, I like that.
You see what I'm saying?
I like that.
It'll get you isn't that something?
I
Because
like that.
it's like he's meditating, right? But just remove all that extra stuff. And like we at first we had a problem with, well, sometimes I get tongue tied speaking Hebrew, and so we have a little saying whenever we in the African American community, instead of saying he both to do, we say he about to do it.
I like that. I like that. I like that. It's a play. It's a play on words. Okay, so on that point, where we're going with this is just saying that the way that we connect with Hashem, specifically as African Americans, and the experiences that we had in North America, we just have to really look critically at it and say, like, hey, what was going on? Because we were taught that we were denied. They say you were denied wealth, you were denied equality, you're denied all these things. And because we had no spiritual tools to connect to Hashem, we connected the inequities that we were experiencing by these people have something to do with our fulfillment in life. Those are two different conversations. Whatever America designs, great. You say, okay, hey, eat at this water fountain. All right, fine. I go to this water fountain. All right, cool. Like you ain't coming here. Okay, cool. We separate. But that has nothing to do with my fulfillment. My fulfillment has to do with my relationship with the Creator, my relationship with my fellow man, my relationship with nature. Right after the Jews received the Torah, we go into Mishpatim, right, which is the laws between men, right? So these are the mechanisms for fulfillment. This is how we connect, right? So the point is just saying that when we're looking at the mechanisms of things that are going on around us, it's just to say that was God punishing us, or did we just not have the right tools? When God said, you know what, you should be separate from white people, you should have your own restaurants, your own eateries, your own hotels, and your own everything. And I'm not dissing. I love my white people. We're not talking about racism here. We're talking about spiritual souls and souls that are not connected to spirituality. No judgment on nobody. You know what I mean? So it's just saying that their understanding of spirituality was much different than ours, from just by definition of the region we came from. You know what I mean? Just by that definition, we were different. So God coming to us and saying, you're separate. Eat in separate places. Don't eat by them. Don't mix with them. Don't educate your kids in the same school by them. Dress differently. Stay within your community. That's interesting how that played out, because we didn't have any halakha. The design of the system was telling us, like, don't intermix. Don't intermix. I'm just saying a lot of us fell to it. But the point is, it's just saying that it's a real thing. But that was a law in America. Now let's be honest. If that law didn't exist, a lot of those women from the nation of Asaph would have been running out a lot of those Israelite guys. They're doing it now, right? But I'm saying back then, right? So I'm just saying, so when we look at a lot of these things, if we apply Kedusha and Torah to it, it may not be discrimination. A lot of people don't want to hear that. They want to say, no, you want to integrate. You want to do these things. No, we don't. We don't need to do that. We don't have the same diet like you. We don't have the same stomach like you. You know, our desires are different in that, but that doesn't mean we can't have brotherhood. It doesn't mean that we can't help each other. It doesn't mean that you have gifts and talents that can help us. And we have gifts and talents that can help you. Per se, maybe. We don't know. We have to investigate. But either way, it's just that. Okay, so let's just move forward with this bigger concept. So, like I told you, one of the studies, you know, when I was in yeshiva, in terms of you know, was Jewish literature, right? And we've been exploring a lot of things. We've been exploring what you call Musar text, like character development text, right? We've been learning Kabbalistic text. Excuse me. We've been learning Talmudic stuff, right? Things from the Talmud. And so now what I want to do is I want to introduce the concept of Jewish thought. Okay, because what we've mostly been exposed to so far is character development, and character development in Kabbalistic and in the literal Torah itself, the commentators. But I want to focus on what is it to think like a Jew? Like, what is the thought process? What are the ideas? And the thing is, you guys have such a great background just before I met, but even since we've been learning together, you know, you guys have such a great background in terms of being able to understand language within language. So when people talk about different levels of wisdom, you guys know, oh wow, chokmah, right? When people talk about understanding, you know, bina, right? You know these things, right? When they talk about the endless source or the creator, you know they're talking about the Ein Sof, right? So you have these tools, you have this language, right? So we're going to go into Jewish thought because the whole thing is that we want to be completely devoted to Hashem. So I want to introduce this new author and new sefer. The sefer is called Duties of the Heart. So we're going to read a little bit about it to start with. And okay, as we always do, who wrote these sefers, who was going on, you know, where were they going on, what was the mindset? Okay, so this particular person was, this is sefer we're going to read, the author was in the year 1050 to 1120. Okay, so his name was Batya bin Yosef ben Pakya, but he was known as Rabbeinu Bakya, right? So the thing is, there's a famous commentator in the Torah named Rabbeinu Bakya, but it's not the same person, right? Just a really quick thing. So Rabbeinu Bakya Asher, because you're going to see the name. So Rabbeinu Bakya Asher was a rabbi who was a little bit after this person, actually. The person we're just reading about, the other Rabbeinu Bakya. So he's from 1255 to 1340, and was a rabbi, Jewish, best known for his commentators, and is one of the two scholars referred to as Rabbeinu Bakya. So who's the other Rabbeinu Bakya? This is the guy we're learning about right now. Okay. So he's a Jewish philosopher. What does it mean, philosophy, right? Because we can't say philosophy in terms of like how the non-Jewish world has philosophy, right? Because you have Greek philosophy, these different things. Philosophy basically means that the space of philosophy existed by the non-Jew, and we incorporated our way of thinking in that frame. You know what I'm saying? Type of a thing. So, okay, so who's Rabbeinu Bakya? So, okay, you see the years he was born. He's a Jewish philosopher. He was from Spain, not to be confused with Rabbeinu Bakya bin Asher, who came later and was a big commentator. Okay, so this is a book we're reading. He's the author of the first Jewish system of ethics, guidance. It's called Guidance to the Duties of the Heart. Written around 1080, it was translated into Hebrew by Judah bin Shaul bin Tabun. He says in the year 1161 to 80, under the title, it says,
Rabbi, are you gonna share the screen?
Oh, you guys aren't seeing this. Oh, I apologize. Yeah, I'm just reading this thing, thinking y'all reading it with me. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, anytime I'm reading, you're not on. Just remind me because I for some weird reason I didn't do it. Okay, we're good. Sorry about that. All right, we're back. Whoa, no, wrong one. Okay, hold on. Right. Okay. Okay. So anyway, okay. So someone just give me the other one. Hold on 1 second. All right, perfect. Okay, we're back. Okay, let's go. Boom. Back into it. Let's go. Okay. Okay. Boom. Boom. Okay. All right. Anyways, okay. So Rabbeinu Bakia, right? Rabbeinu Bakia. There's two Rabbeinu Bakias. One is from Spain, right? And the other one is from. That's a good question. Where is he from? The other one is from. What is this? Perdaga. What is this? Where is this Rabbeinu Bakia? Oh no, that's the other one. Sorry. So this Rabbeinu Bakia is from. No. Okay, so Rabbeinu Bakia. So this is the other Rabbeinu Bakia. I don't know why I'm reading it, but I'm just going to read it just because we're going back over it. Whatever. Anyway, so this is the other Rabbeinu Bakia. He was a pupil of Shimon bin the Rashba, and so he says later Rabbeinu Bakia did not publish a Talmud commentary. He is, however, considered a Jewish scholar to be one of the most distinguished biblical exegesis in Spain. Okay, so I guess both these guys are from Spain. He discarded with zeal and did okay, blah blah blah. Okay, but he somehow he made it to Israel. All right. Anyway, so I guess both of them are from Spain. That's interesting. Okay. Anyway, so Rabbeinu Bakia is a great Jewish philosopher. Jewish philosophy is basically outlook. We would call it hashkafa. The non-Jewish world would call it philosophy, but we just say hashkafa, like outlook, how we see the world, these types of things. Okay, so Rabbeinu Bakia is in the 1050 to 1100s. The book we're going to start learning today. I mean, we're going back into Rav Ashlag, but we got to break everything up. You see what I'm saying? You can't just. It's not just about one sefer at one time. It's like, yes, we have a sefer, we learn it intensely, and we pause, and then we bring in other sefarim because we're building a system, a understanding, and God's revealing to us as we go. Okay. So Rabbeinu Bakia, okay, Rabbeinu Bakia of Spain, okay, the first one. So he says he was the author of the first Jewish system of ethics. So he created it into a system, and it was written around 1080, and it was translated into Hebrew by Judah bin Shaul bin Tabon. He says in the year 1161 or between 1180. He says around the title of Hibut al Chabit. He says the duties of the heart. Okay, so this was originally written by this author in the 1100s. I mean the 1000, 1080, and it was translated into Hebrew under the duties of the heart. He says little is known about his life except that he bore the title of Dayan at the Beis Din. Bakia was thoroughly similar with Jewish rabbinical literature, the philosophical and scientific Arabic and Roman literature frequently quoted from the works of non-Jewish moral philosophers in his work. Okay. So he says, so I guess the non-Jewish world loved it too. With the rabbinical literature, he says, and the philosophy. So he was like a well-rounded individual. He knew a lot of different types of studies, and he was able to understand them from a Jewish perspective, right? A Torah perspective. So he says, in the introduction of the duties of the heart, which we're going to be reading very soon, he says, Bakia says that he wishes to fill a great need in Jewish literature. He felt that neither the rabbis of the Talmud nor the subsequent rabbis adequately brought all the ethical teachings of Judaism into a cohort system. Bakia felt that many Jews paid attention only to the outward observance of halacha, the duties of the heart to be performed by the parts of the body. And he says, without regards to the inner ideas, the sentiment that should be embodied in the Jewish way of life. The duties of the heart, he said, he also felt he also felt that many discarded all duties incumbent upon him, whether outwardly observance or inner moral obligations. In his view, most people acted accordingly to selfish, worldly motivations. Batya therefore felt compelled to attempt to present the Jewish faith as a great spiritual founded on reason, revelation, especially regarding the Torah and the Jewish tradition. He stressed the willingness and the joyful reading, the readiness of God, of the God loving heart to perform life's duties. He wrote, "It is impossible to think that the nations would recognize us as being wise and understanding if we're not able to provide infallible proof and explanations for the truth of the Torah and our faith." Many Jewish writers familiar with his work consider him an original thinker of high ranks. He says, according to the Jewish Encyclopedia, Batya is a rare decree of in-depth, of emotional and vivid poetic imagination, the power of eloquence and beauty and dictation with permeating intellect. He was therefore fitted to write a work, and main object which was not to argue about the defend and doctrines of Judaism, but to appeal to the sentiments and to stir and elevate the peoples of the heart. Okay, so we'll finish with this last part. He says the Duties of the Heart became a popular book amongst Jews worldwide as part of were once recited as devotional purposes during Rosh Hashanah. Wow. So what we're reading, people actually use it like for tefillah. And he says, Imam Pakad works inspired and shaped many later writers, including Berkat Maniga and the Encyclopedia. Okay. All right. So just for a second before we go into it. So today we're just going to kind of read the introduction. As my light gets darker, right? The way it is, I mean, I could turn it on, but I'm enjoying this actually. Anyways, all right. So the thing is saying, all right, so where we're at is saying that we're embarking a new world, right? And ethics and morals and these things, because these are the things we got to teach, and we got to teach these things that are so hidden to us, in this world. They want to get rid of ethics and morals. They were like, no morality, no ethics, nothing. They want to get rid of it. So we have to go and find people that, over 1,000 years, you know what I mean? Like, this is like crazy times, you know what I mean? And so we have to go back that far, hundreds and hundreds of years before the takeover started, to find, pathways to bring these teachings and this wisdom back to the masses. That they should know that we're here to serve Hashem, and that we're supposed to connect, and we're supposed to fill our souls. So all these levels of Torah are important. The Kabbalah, the Talmud, the commentaries, the weekly Torah portions, the Tanakh, everything. We see this in Jewish thought, Musa, refinement of ethics and moral. So it's not just a simple thing of just reading the Torah, right? We've established that part. Like, no, this is a system. This is work, right? And it's a labor, right? And the Torah is a labor. And if you take out one part of it and you just focus on one part, if you focus on one part and take out another, hold on one second. I had to bring out the guy. It was getting too weird. Anyways, so all right. So we're back in it. So the thing is, okay. So we're gonna read the first chapter of this. Not the first chapter. We'll read the introduction a little bit more. But the thing is, the key about this is falling in love with the literature of Jews throughout history, right? And to see that there's so many perspectives and there's so many thoughts and there's so much going on that we can engross ourselves forever, right? Okay, so let's go into it. Okay, so we're going into the introduction. of the duties of the heart. So we're going to go to introduction, and we'll just do a little bit. We'll just talk it out a little bit, and then we'll call it a day. But we'll go back, start Wednesday with Rav Ashlag in halacha. Okay, but today we want to start off the week nice and soft. You know what I mean? Okay, so it says. He says, Amar Hamachaver Baruch Hashem Elohei Israel Asher Lo Yeot Ma'inayin Ha'echad Hamamiti. So he says like this. He says, Blessed be he, the Lord of Israel, to whom the true unity can be fitting and ascribed, whose existence of the eternal, whose benevolence is unincreasing, whose benevolence is unceasing, and who created all that is found as a sign of his unity, who has formed beings to serve as witnesses of his power, and brought new things into existence to testify to his wisdom and his great benevolence. As written, one generation shall praise your work for another and shall declare your mighty acts, as in Psalms chapter 145. Verse 4, and it says, in all your work shall give thanks to the God, O Lord, and your saints shall bless you, and shall speak of the glory of your kingdom, and talk of your power to make known to the sons of men his mighty acts. Continues in Psalms. Vegad Godala Leshabeto Sheba Tovot Asher Hemitiva Heme Hamhabore Le Avadav Le Amad Barim Achere Hamitzot. Okay, so he says Otam out. So he says the greatest gift which the Creator bestowed on his servants, human beings, after bringing them out of the full perception and in completion understanding, is wisdom, which is the life of their spirit and the candle of their intellect. It brings them to the favor of God and saves them from the wrath of the world. And the next, as the scripture says, the O Lord gives wisdom. Out of the mouth comes knowledge and understanding, it says in Proverbs. And Eliyahu says there is a spirit of man that in a breath of the Almighty that gives him understanding. He said the breath of the Almighty gives him understanding. He says in Jobs, he said, Daniel said, give wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding Daniel. And I am the Lord your God, who teaches for you your benefit and lead you by the way that you should go, says in Isaiah. Okay, so this is interesting. So he's going to bring three aspects of wisdom. He says, he says, mit chalechet lesholosha chalekim. So he says there's three divisions of wisdom, okay? And it sounds like we keep hearing the same type of stuff, but hey, we got to understand this. This is a big road. Hey, chalech aleha rishon chachmat. Hayitzirot shekurim la belishon eref. So he says like this. Araf. So he says like this. So he says the first division of is science of nature. So he's going totally. He's not in the Kabbalah right now. He's not into these high levels. He's looking at the world and he's breaking it down, right? And that's why this is important. Because you have to be able to see things on all points. You know what I mean? It's not just like we're up in the clouds and we're all like high in the air and we're seeing nothing but the sun and the galaxy. No, he's bringing it down. So he says the first division of wisdom is science of nature. He said the Arabic is called Alim Abatib. So he was in Spain, so I guess a lot of people spoke Arabic. He said this branch of knowledge deals with the essentials and the incidental properties of material bodies, right? So he's saying this is the level. He says, so when you see the science of nature and these types of things, he says, hey, you know what? Um, he said this is a level of knowledge. He says, "Veha kalech mahasheni he chachmat hashimush she korim." So he says the second division consists of practical sciences called in Arabic al minim. So he says these comprise of he says art is arithmetics. I don't know what this means. Well, you see this word? These comprise of what's this arithmetic? How you say this word?
Arithmetic.
What is that? What is arithmetic?
Like arithmetic, math.
Okay. Arithmetic. Okay, fine. Arithmetic, engineering, and astrology and music. This is the second. He said this is second division of practical science, right? And he says Veichalek of Mashelishi Korin Lag Be Shilishon. So he says the third division in Arabic is called Alaim. He says the science of theology, which deals with the knowledge of God, knowledge in his Torah and other spiritual things, such as the soul, the intellect, and the spiritual being. Vekol Chalek, he says, Hechachama Lifi, so he says, all of these divisions of wisdom in their respective branches are gates which the Creator has opened for men through which they may obtain a comprehension of religion and of the world. Only that some science are more needed for religious matters, while others are more needed for secular interests. See how we're bringing this is very practical stuff, right? Ve'asher hasarek alehem yoter le'nai ha'olam hi ha'chachama. So he says the sciences the science whose use is closely to worldly matters is the science of nature, which is the lowest science, and the practical science, which is the second. The two sciences instruct all of the secrets of the physical world, its use and benefits in industries and trade, and it is conducive to the physical and material well-being. Av hachama b'shei hasarech, he says, aleha yoter al ha-torah ha-chachma. So he says, the science which is most needed for the religion is the highest science, theology. He says we're under the duties of. He says where we are under duty to study it in order to understand and obtain a knowledge of our religion. But to study it in order to obtain worldly benefits is forbidden. Our teachers said in Nidarim, he says, expounding on the verse, to love your Lord and to hearken his voice and to cleave to him. This means one should not say, I will read the scriptures that I may be called a scholar. I will study the Mishnah that I will be called a rabbi, and I will study the Talmud to be an elder. He says, and to sit in assembly of elders, but learn. He says, but learn out of love and honor, and he says, learn out of love and honor will come in the end. He says, and do good deeds for the sake of their Maker, and to speak to them the words of Torah. And for his own sake, make not of them a crown withering, to magnify yourself, nor to spade to dig with. He says, the fortunate is the man who fears the Lord and delights in his commandments. He said 12:1. He says, Elazar expound this. He says, in his commandments, he says, in his commandments, but not in his reward of his commandments. He said, but this is just what we have learned. We have used to say, be not like the servants who serve the master on the condition of receiving a reward, but be like the servant who serves the master out of the condition of receiving a reward. Okay, so let's understand what's being said. This is like a very profound point. So he says, Rav Eliezer expands on this. He says, in his commandments, but not the reward of his commandments. So he's talking about this idea of doing it for the sake of heaven, right? Lishma, right? He says this is just what we have learned, He says, he used to say, be not like the servant who serves the master on condition of receiving reward. Okay? But be like the servant who serves the master without the condition of receiving a reward. He says, ve ha'asharim, Shepetacham habore le da'at Torato vedato lehim shelosha. So he says the avenue in which the Creator has opened the knowledge of His law in religion are three. Ve'achad mehem ve'shakel ve'netzil ma mikol paga. He says the first is the sound intellect which is free of any damages. Okay, so he says the avenue of which the Creator opens for knowledge of His law and religions are three. So the avenues which open. So we're going to see what he means by this. We're learning. We're going. He said, ha mehem shakel. He says the first is a sound intellect which is free of any damages. He says Torah Tov. So he said the second, the book of his law received to Moses his prophet. So he's saying the first avenue to understand is the God and His law is the first is the intellect which is free of damage. Second is the book of His laws revealed to the prophet Moses. He says He said the third is the translations which we have received from our ancient sages who in turn receive them from the prophet, peace be upon him, into them. He says the great Saddam, the blessed memory, already discussed this avenue to a sufficient extent. He says, So he says, furthermore, the Torah, he says, furthermore, the science of the Torah falls into two divisions. Right? So he's breaking down things. So he's saying up here, he says there's avenues with the Creator open us. He said the avenues for the Creator open us for as his religion and his law is there the Torah, these things. Now he's saying there's another two dimensions, right? He says the first aim at knowledge. He says He says furthermore the science of Torah falls into two divisions. Ve'achad mehem leidad chavot. He says the first aims at the knowledge of the duties of the limbs, practical duties, and is the science of external conducts. He says vehasheni leidad chovot. He says the second detail with the duties of the heart, namely is sentiments and thoughts, and is the science of the inner life. He said the duties of the limbs likewise fall into two divisions. So you see where he's going with this: limbs, body, this, the whole thing, thoughts. He says the first consists of the precepts of which reason would have dictation, even if the Torah had not make it allegory. So this is the thing. So he's going through this dynamics of inner work. So he's saying there's aspects of analyzing the Torah where you see that things in life normally make sense, even if the Torah doesn't outline it. He says, he said the second precept received on the authority of the revelation, which reason neither obligates nor rejects, such as the prohibition for milk and meat or shotness, the garments of the wool and the flax. He said the sowing of the seeds together. He said similar precepts whom reason for prohibition or obligation is unknown to us. So he said in the same way that we can make reason of things that are not exactly said, we make reasons of things that don't really necessarily make sense. He says, chavot. He says, chavot, kol shar shehen. He said the duties of the heart, however, are all rooted in the rational principle with God's help. He says, "V'kol ha-mitzvot." Sorry about that. Somebody just going me. Okay. All right, hold on. Where we at? Okay, yeah, we're here. Okay, so he says like this. V'kol ha-mitzvot ahem nikalemot. So he says all the precepts are neither positive. He says all the precepts he said all precepts, neither positive commandments nor negative commandments. We do not need to explain this for the duties of the hearts of the limbs because these are all universally known. He says, I will, however, with God's help, mention the positive and negative commandments of the duties of the heart due to serve as an example of those not cited. He says, Umi mitzvot, he says, Aseh mashebech Chovot, HaLevavot. So he says, among the positive commandments of the duties of the heart, to believe that the world has a creator who created it from naught, and that he says not, and that there is none like him, that we acknowledge his unity, that we serve him in our hearts. We reflect on wonders of his heart, that these may serve as evidences to him, that we may find our trust in him, that we humble ourselves before him, that we revere him, that we fear and feel abashed when we consider that we observe our outwardly and inwardly being, that we long to do his will, and that we devote our acts to his name, and we love him, and those that love him in order to come close to him, that we hate his enemies, and similar the duties which are not visible by the senses. Av chalavin he says sheba chorot. So he says the negative commandments of the duty of the hearts are the conversations of those just mentioned. He says he's bringing Leviticus. He says also included in them to not convey to not to covet anger or bear a grudge, as written, you should not bear anger, you should not avenge or bear a grudge. He says vehime v'shelo nikareher. He says along them our minds must not muse on doing transgressions, nor desire them, nor resolve to do them, and other similar things which are hidden in man and observed by none but the Creator in the Lord. The Lord, search the heart, and I test the mind. And the candles of God, says in Jeremiah, he says, and the candles of God is the spirit of man searching for all the inner depths of his heart, it says in Proverbs. So basically, what he's talking about, this point is working on the condition of our heart, right? To be able to allow our heart to be in conjunction with God's will, to remove these things, to separate ourselves, but not just from the standpoint of like, oh, I'm bad or this, but no, but understanding the functionality and doing creating a functionality. And he says, Umi fine, he says, as the science of the Torah deals with two parts, external and inward commandments, I studied the book of our predecessors who lived after the compilers of the Talmud. They composed many works dealing with the precepts in the in the explanations of the learning from the science of inward religion. I have found, however, that all that they intend to explain and clarify falls into three categories. So we read a little bit of this and we'll stop here. He says, Hey, may the Umefaresh Sefer Torah. So he says, first is to explain that the Torah and the books of the prophets, and this is in one of the two ways, neither explaining the words and the subjects matters did Rabbeinu Sada, a blessed memory, in his commentaries of most of the book of the scriptures, or to explain the language and the grammar, the grammatical forms, the uses of all the variants, as well as paying heed to accuracy of the text, like the books of Ganach and Mizortis and their schools. He says the second, to compile the explanation of the commandments to the form as such as the works of Rav Ketz bin Yitzhak in Blessed Memory, or of only the commandments that apply today, such as the Halakot Peshkodim. So he's going through all the different the books, the rabbis, everybody he's compiled his data from to create what he's saying. He says Halakot Hagolot. He says in similar connections or the special topics as the Gihonim. So he's basically going through different time periods, right? So you have we talked about this before, but just very briefly. So he said you have Moshe Rabbeinu, he passes on to Yehoshua. Yehoshua passes it on to the elders pass it on to the prophets pass it on to the Great Assembly. The Great Assembly falls down, and then it goes into this generation of the pairs with Shemai and Hillel, Shemai and Tali. They go to the pairs, and then we go into the times of the Tanaim. The Tanaim is like Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and then after them you have the Amoraim, which are the rabbis of the Gemara. And now he's writing from the perspective of the Rishonim, the generation after the Amoraim, and so he's going through all of these different teachers and explanations for how he came to these conclusions, right? And so he says, Vekarati alehim. He says, I examined these writings, but failed to find among them a book specifically devoted to the inner wisdom, and I have found this wisdom, which is the duties of the heart, had been entirely neglected. No work has been compiled systematically explaining its roots and branches. He's a confident guy, no? She says, I greatly wonder about this and thought to myself, perhaps the class of duties is not obligatory from the Torah, but is only an ethical obligation, the aim of which is to teach us the proper and just way. Possibly belong to the class of extra practices that are optional, of which we are not to be held accountable for them, nor will we be punished for neglecting them. And therefore, our predecessors omitted to write a special book on them. And I investigated the duties of the heart from reason, scripture, and tradition, Talmud, Midrash, etc., and inquired whether or not they are obligatory, and found many foundational of all the precepts, and that if there's any deficiency in their observance or external duties whatsoever can be properly fulfilled. He says, Min ha shakel sheka amarti. So he says the first argument for reason. Okay, so let's stop here because we're going to keep going. Yeah, he's going to keep going. So we're on 31. Okay, so we're on 31, path to the duties. This is still basically a little bit past introduction, but we're there. All right, so it's a little bit different. What are some of the thoughts on this?
Well, I just kind of thinking about it, what it does is it really allows us to have a holistic approach to the way we understand and the way we view life. I think that from the first aspect, when he begins to talk about how, one of the first steps is that we have an intellect that is not damaged. And that just makes me think about, being a newborn baby, and being a baby without all of the trends and all of the just negative things that can come into your life as you grow through the socialization process that attaches itself to you and the way you think, the way you perceive, but rather your thought pattern and your thought life is not hindered and is not manipulated by other concepts, but rather you approach that first step with a pure heart, a pure mind, and without all of these projections and all of these ideas but rather you really have to empty yourself out. And then when you pick up the Torah, now you begin to read and you begin to study and you begin to learn. But I love the fact that he put theology as the first, as the highest science. Hold on, baby. As the highest science. And that science is so important because it really explains the other two sciences. It really gives you a focus when you approach the natural sciences and when you approach the second level of sciences in dealing with arithmetic and so forth. Because if you think about it, when you go to the collegiate level, I mean, you have whole departments that are based upon these sciences. Well, if you're not grounded and you start approaching these other sciences before you have a spiritual basis, before you have a theological basis, you're jumping the ladder. You're jumping the ladder. Just to give you, I remember a long time ago, I was sitting out. I went to a Walmart, and this is when they was just starting to build these super Walmart centers, right? And right next to this Walmart, they were building a Lowe's. Okay, and I remember sitting in the parking lot, and I got in the car, and I just was looking at the construction of this building, of this Lowe's, and I saw the mortars, I saw the carpenters, I saw the welders, I saw all of these guys, all the plumbers, the electricians, and they were all working. And I just was looking at, I was just, very fascinated by just what they were doing. And, hey, I had a moment where as I began to, have I was meditating almost. And a question came up and it says, listen, a doctor can be a world-renowned physician. He can be a world-renowned brain surgeon. You can keep it. That carpenter could be a world-renowned carpenter or electrician or be the best in his field, right? But he could go home, that doctor, that physician can go home, and he could be a complete scumbucket to his family. He can be abusive. He can be a very wicked person. But then that same voice, that same question said, you as a minister and as my servant, you can't be like that. He said, you have to be able to be righteous in your field, your career, and you got to be righteous in your home. You got to be righteous everywhere that you go. And without this guideline and this in dealing with the heart and looking at the structure of theology first, and we would say putting God first, and then I become a carpenter. Then I learn the trades and the professions, because while I'm building a house or while I'm building a porch or while I'm doing a floor, something like that, then what happens is that I'm doing it now with the mindset that I'm blessing Hashem, that I'm putting everything into the right perspective. You know what I'm saying?
Hello? I think we went out a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can see you guys. Okay, so let's do this. So we'll finish we'll finish up things here. We'll continue on Wednesday. Okay, but the thing is like this. So let's really work through these levels of perception. Really just think this thing out. And really think about it and really relate it to the world around us, right? To really look at the world around us and say, like, you know what? how do these levels really fit into my life here? Like, what am I looking at when I look at the tree? What am I looking at when I look at the other person? What is the actual substance of this entity in front of me, right? What is the actual what is the actual form of substance that's been expressed, right? And to really think about that and to understand that when we see people, we don't understand their essence. And we're projecting on the reality all the time, like whatever's in our imagination, whatever we've experienced, right? And we have to be able to separate this aspect of um, separate this aspect of who we are and 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 what we're trying and what's going on around us and what we think we are, right? To not put ourselves in any type of intellectual space where we're locked up, right? Where we could say like, hey, you know what? Who I am, I don't know. Let's try to figure it out. I'm not stuck in any definition, right? My essence, I don't know. All I know is my expression, my essence. So, but maybe through this expression, I could get an insight to my essence. And not just by me, other people too. How much of what I'm looking at is my own projection, and how much of what I'm looking at is the actual form of substance of the person or the entity or the situation, right? So this is an intellectual tool to advance our experience in life and to give us new tools to say, hey, let's really think this thing out. Let's really adjust it. Anyways, so we'll continue on Wednesday. This is a soft landing. We'll keep working on the safer. As you can see, it's very deep and it's very practical, and we'll try to fit it in. You know, we only got so much time. You know what I mean? We only got so much time because we still got to do some halacha. We got to do a little bit of halacha for Rosh Chodesh, and also Purim is coming up. So we got to get ready for that. We got to get ready for the fast. We got to start thinking about the fast and how to prepare ourselves mentally for the fast. I hope you guys already started reading the book of Esther and going through that. So you should be going through that now if you can, when you have free time, a little bit here, a little bit there. But going through that and being very, very familiar with that story. Baruch atah Adonai le'olam.